Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today I have Clinton on today's episode, and today we are going to be talking about gear. So Clinton, tell me about your gear. You've been in this game for a while. Tell me the whole long list of cameras and equipment that you've used over the years.
Yeah. So I'm Canon. I won't say it's the only way to fly.
Canon for life or?
Canon for life. I was given the Canon A-1 to shoot film with. And I think I've just stuck that way. I think my grandfather was also Canon, so we just kind of stuck that way. It's what I shot my first wedding on. I did half of the wedding with black and white film, and that was just the A1 with a 50mm lens.
Why did you choose black and white film for a wedding?
Because the other camera I was using was a digital camera, and I think it was a Minolta back then. And I just said I'm willing to do it because I knew I could trust that I would get it right with the film, and I was pretty new with the digital. So I was covering my bases.
To hear that these days.
I know. But back then you really did craft each shot.
Yes.
You really made each shot worth it. So when I first got into digital, I think you just kind of blasted everything. And the more experience I get, I think I'm taking less photos because I know when I've got the shot.
Yeah.
So why take more and why just waste time and waste editing and why waste disk space when you're using a 45 megapixel camera? You want to take less photos as possible. So yeah, so the more experience I've got. So Canon, with the AE1, that was always fun. And then there's like a T70 or something, which was like click and then it would wind on for you. So it was like click, zzz, click, zzz. It was like, oh, that was pretty special. And that had different lenses for that too. So that was a whole different ball game. But then it was getting into the digital side of things. I think the first digital, I don't know if you call it professional, but was the 20D. And just with kit lenses and stuff like that. And that's what got me started.
Do you remember what kind of lens it was?
It was like a 1660 or something like that. Just
F.
That was
to 5.6, 6.3.
Yeah, for sure. I was like, oh my God. And
so it's not like an F1.4.
So light and just like plastic and stuff like that. So, you go with what you got. But then I think one of the first lenses I ever really spent quite a bit of money on was the 7200 2.8
for EF mount.
Yeah, that really changed a lot.
Was it the first version?
The very first version. Yep. And
I think I owned the second version at one point.
I only just replaced it like a year or so ago, with the new RF, which is a lot lighter and the quality is just like, oh my God. But I was using that for 16 years without an issue.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about lenses. If you buy quality, you're not replacing them every few years like you probably are your camera bodies. There's something that they're a great investment. And a lot of the time they can hold their resale value as well. I found that I purchased that Canon 70-200 f2.8 version 2 for I think about 1,500 Australian dollars secondhand off Marketplace. This was years ago. And then I think I sold it for the exact same amount of money as well.
Yeah, see, I paid $3,300 for mine.
Brand new.
Yeah.
I think the person I bought mine off, they were going to Sony and I think they just wanted to sell it.
Yeah. So that was, and I didn't have any real issues. The only issues was going from DSLR to mirrorless and wanting to have the native
the
lenses
EF
for that.
to RF.
Yeah. So
do you have any horror stories about that?
Using the adapter.
What are your thoughts on the adapters?
I had to use it. I first got the Canon R when it just a year after it came out. I did one of those Canon collective days where they come and try the gear, and we met at the botanical gardens and they had a model there and everything. So once I was kind of like, do I really want to change? Blah, blah, it's going to be a huge change. So I did eventually go, okay, I'll do this Canon collective. And once I used it and felt it and then just felt like how I could really embrace the workflow of it all and change it to exactly how I want it to be, every button and everything. Yeah, I was like, this is the way of the future. I've got to embrace this.
So initially you had resistance going from DSLR to mirrorless. What was your biggest problem? Is it because you knew how DSLRs worked and mirrorless was kind of this new thing?
Yeah, and DSLR is very mechanical. So I was doing a lot of sports and dance photography and doing extreme sports and like precision, like action dance stuff. And so it's got to, you got to be on board with it. And I'm not a burst photographer. I'm a take a shot photographer. So I'm waiting for that right moment. So you get a synergy with your camera basically to know when to take the shot. So when I went to mirrorless, it took me a long time to get that feeling back. And you actually have to pre-shoot before the action happens because there's that little bit of a lag in it because it's not so mechanical and so precise. There's a little bit of a lag, I feel. So when I'm doing an action shot and I've got to get a leg perfectly positioned and it's fast, it's taken me like 2 or 3 shots to get it right. Whereas before I just would get it right on because it was right there. So there's a little bit of those things. A horror story there using that adapter. I kept getting error messages saying the connection or something was wrong with it. And
that's the last thing you want to see when you're at an event and you only get one take at things.
And I think the worst one was doing an awards night. The guy's up there, he's getting the handshake. I'm about to take the shot and all of a sudden I push the trigger and then it's like error warning. I was like, quickly turn it around, whip the lens off, pop the batteries back in, did a full reset, put the lens back on and it was fine. So it took me 3 or 4 seconds and everyone's like, what's he doing? But thank God it came back on and I got the shots. But
and you were able to do that so fast as well.
I know.
That's a skill in itself.
I know. Because I've got I always get the battery grip. So it's got the 2. So easy to just pull out that thing and just slap it back in again. And But I always have backup gear. I've got the backup gear and it was all in the back. I wasn't carrying 2 at the time because I thought I didn't need to.
Right. I was about to ask you, so you've got backup cameras.
Yeah.
Are you always, well, obviously not, but generally are you carrying 2 cameras on you and what are the purposes for those 2 cameras?
Primarily the purpose is to have a backup camera if anything goes wrong. When you start getting serious about weddings or events where it's a captured moment, then you have to have backup gear. I don't have backup lenses, but I got backup bodies and backup flashes and heaps of batteries and cards. All that kind of stuff. Thank God I've never had any card failures.
I was going to ask you, what kind of cards do you normally invest into? Because media is like,
I don't muck around. I get the real deal, SanDisk, like whatever, premium ones. I don't muck around with that stuff. As soon as I've had any kind of if I put it into a camera and it hasn't connected, or I've put it into the laptop and it hasn't connected, when I finally get it connected, I'll whip it out and I've got a nice big fat red marker.
I was going to say,
I'll just put a red cross right across it. I don't muck around. I've never lost anything, thank God, and I've never, on the fly.
Yeah, and forgive my ignorance about Canon cameras, but do Canon have dual card slots?
In the R, they didn't. That was one of the issues.
Right.
But all the 5D, all the
other
R5s,
professional.
they'll have dual slots.
And would you utilize that, or is it kind of like a nice to have it, or I should probably do that?
Usually I've got RAWs going to one and then JPEGs going to the other. So I've got the backup of the JPEGs, but I've got the RAWs going into the other one, keeping that. So that's my little backup thing. Because I know I'm as much as possible getting it right in camera. So I know I can work with a JPEG if I had to.
Yeah, I think that's probably the wisest way to do it. That's not always how I operate. I always shoot RAW. I don't even put JPEGs onto my cards because I'm not going to use them. I'm just going to go straight to the RAW. And then I try my best to get it as close as possible, knowing that there is leeway in Lightroom to fix up the levels and all that kind of stuff. But I guess you come from a film background where you need to get it a lot closer.
Yeah.
And there's not, actually tell me, is there much wiggle room in the dark room? If you're maybe 2 stops underexposed, can you change it much or?
You can, but then you've got to be going to like a professional developer. You can't just go to your regular, neighborhood developer. You've got to be going to, one of the professional ones in the city, and they'll actually take the time to go through them when they're getting processed. So they'll do a lot of that for you. But yeah, you've got to get it right. And there's no way to check. Like, I can't believe what we used to go through.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. And that's something I'm glad we don't have to go back to. I never really had to deal with that too much. I mean, when I was growing up, like family photos, we had like click, and we did use film, but it wasn't like the professional got to roll it on and change the settings manual. It was all automatic. Point, click, a flash goes off, looks horrible, you got red eyes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, red eyes is nothing, a thing of the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just having that ability to now with the mirrorless, having the electronic viewfinder and seeing what's happening in real time is another game changer for me, because I'm like adjusting things and I'm seeing what it's going to look like when I take the photo before I even take the photo.
Yeah.
So that's been a thing I utilize a lot, and previewing it too. Like, people think I'm crazy, or they think I'm still looking at them through the camera, but I'm actually like previewing and going through and making sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I remember going, because I did have I still do have a Canon 6D, which is over there, and that's a DSLR. It's not mirrorless. And I remember going to, I think my first mirrorless camera for photography, which I think was the Panasonic S1.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, really good, being able to look at the screen and knowing exactly what I was going to capture. And then as soon as it's one of those features where as soon as you have it, you're like, I can't go back. Why would I go back?
I know.
And I'm drawing a blank as to why I would go back.
Right. Yeah.
So I always find it really interesting, people going from DSLR to mirrorless, how they were so resistant to it. And then I guess they then got it in their hands, tried it out. And I know at the start, the technology probably wasn't there, or it was just too different or whatever. But I mean, these days in 2024, if you're not shooting mirrorless, I mean, you must really love DSLRs, or there must be really something that I don't know,
it can be cost prohibitive, because it's taken me 3 years to get all the lenses that I want, the RF lenses. So yeah,
it can definitely be a process when you.
I didn't have the cash to dump.
Yeah, not
20K on all new lenses and new body all at once.
Yeah, not a lot of people do, which is unfortunate. But for a lot of us, we do the incremental changes. So we change the body over first, and if you've still got the lenses, then you're like, okay, I guess I'll use a lens adapter. And then you're at an event, award ceremony, and then it jams up on you, and you go, all right, never again. I'm going to have to start getting lenses.
Yeah, that's when you get serious about it. Yeah, that's why I went with the 7200, because that's probably on my body the most. Use it for portraits, for sports, for events. It's just a great lens.
Yeah, I find 7200 is an essential lens for me. Also a 24 to 70.
Yeah.
But I do know for some people, for some content creators, they'll never use a 70 to 200 because they're either filming themselves or something that is very close to them. So a 16 to 35, 2.8 would be good, or a 24 to 70 if you don't really need it to be super wide. But yeah, a 70 to 200 is definitely something that if you do events or sport, it's definitely an essential.
Well, and any kind of event. I've also got I saved my pennies for a little bit longer and got the 28 to 70 2.0, and
the Canon one. Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's heavier than the 7200.
Yeah, it's big.
It's a beast. Yeah. But I'm loving it. That little bit of extra down to the 2.0 in low light situations has been amazing, to just have that little bit extra. And then, to be able to, even with portraits and stuff like that, I've been playing with it in the studio in 2.8, and just that drop off that you get with it from, photographing a face or something is just gorgeous too.
Yeah, that's one of the hard things as a Sony user, seeing other camera brands innovate and do things. You're like, oh, Sony, why don't you do that? But then like either a few months later, Sony either brings something out or they bring something out that in my mind might be more usable for me or whatever. So then I go, oh, okay, thank you, Sony. Because I think there is a rumor floating around right now that Sony is going to bring out a 24-72 f2. So that would be interesting to see, because for some people, like f2 is getting really into that prime lens f-stop territory.
Sure. Yeah.
And unless they really need f1.2 or 1.4 or even 1.8, an f2 might really do the job. And it's so much more versatile as well, being able to do 24-70.
So once you have those two lenses, then, you set, I've got 16-35. I really got that when I did real estate for a while. You can't do real estate without that lens, really. But then I've got a 50, but I don't really use it.
Okay. Not even for portraits, because you use the 70-200?
Yeah, because that's just that for like a little bit longer, get away, get the perspective, and get really nice and tighten up the background and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, having the 28-70 is, I love doing photo walks where I'll just get someone and we'll just walk around the city, either during the day or during the night, depends on what we want to do, different weather, different situations, and just have a bit of fun. And that's one of my favorite things to do. And yeah, having those two lenses, you've got everything you need, really. And without flash, without trying to find light and do all that kind of fun stuff that you originally did back in the day when you first get started, just for the love of the craft and the artistry of it. Those are fun things that I still like to do every now and again.
Yeah, cool. So we've covered a little bit of your gear journey. What are you shooting with today? It's mirrorless. It's Canon. What actual camera body are you using?
So the R5. I know they've got 2 out now. So I was like, oh man. But no, it's amazing. It's an amazing camera. Does everything. Does little video clips here and there. I still do just like highlight stuff when people ask, which is really easy. Flipping over, it's just one button. It's like, oh, I need a video. Click, get video. Yeah. So that then those two lenses that I had, I've still got the R I use as a backup, and sometimes I'll have those main 2 lenses on each camera. There's not many times where I need to like be flipping backwards and forwards between it, because I've kind of figured out what the event is. I've usually got the schedule of event. I've pre-visualized what I want to do in all those different scenarios, so I don't need to flip cameras too much. Yeah, and then just I've gone to using all my lighting is now Godox, from the V1 on camera flash to a 200 Pro and a 400 Pro, battery powered. I love that because I can just take that anywhere. Don't have to worry about plugging it in. I shot with the 400 yesterday for about 6 hours on about 1/8 of the power, 16th power, and it only used like 2/3 of the battery. So loving that. And I can set them up anywhere, they go anywhere outside and all that kind of stuff. So I'm loving all that gear. And it's relatively, I had no problems with it. I've had some issues where I've been in the city and it starts firing off or it's misfiring. But then all it is I just need to change the radio frequencies a little bit and find something else that nobody else is using. And it's been fine.
Yeah, so that's a thing, is it?
Yeah.
That the frequencies will affect the flash?
It seems like
I don't know much about flash,
right,
so educate me.
Yeah. So you got your wireless trigger on your camera, and then you can adjust the frequency by different numbers, whatever. I was in the city one time, and then the flash just randomly started going off. I'm like, what is going on? I'd never had that happen before, and it's never happened since. So somebody, and I just left it on the default. At that stage, it was new to me, and I just left it on the default setting. So somebody else within, a few hundred meters in any direction must have had the same stuff going on.
And was triggering it.
And it was triggering it.
Right.
Yeah. And other times it's not triggered, So whether there's too much radio, I don't know much of it.
Yeah. You just use the gear. You're not the one making it.
Yeah. And at events that I've done, like at the MCG for like Boxing Day test or the Shane Warne Memorial, the broadcasters want to know exactly what gear you have and what radio frequencies you're using so you don't interrupt the broadcast and all the gear that they have and radio mics and all that kind of stuff. So that's just way over my head. That's a bit too tech nerdy for me, but I'm more on the creative side. But it's worked for me.
Yeah, cool. And you've got all this gear. So can you give me a use case or talk me through a project where you're using your Canon R5 and all your flashes, and what would be a typical project for you that you're using this gear for?
Yeah. One of my bigger clients is the St Kilda Football Club, and I've been shooting with them, and which was a handball to me from my work with Shane Warne, because he was, a big St Kilda fan, and one of his stuff, people went and worked with St Kilda, so they brought me along with them, and I've been shooting events for them for the last 7 years, and the biggest one every year is the Trevor Barker Award, their best in Fairest, and it's been fun that every time I've done it, I'm thinking, I could do this better this way, or I could do it better. So now what I do is...
how did you start off?
Just run and gun it. Just like hope for the best, because you can't use flash during the ceremony. So it all has to be, as the lighting that is there, you've got to use.
Which isn't always great.
No. And I even started talking to the AV people and said, okay, what color temperature are your spots? And now there's usually a mix of like LEDs and incandescent and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, I would start, and they would say, the spots are rated to 3200. So I'd just set the camera to that and just try to, work with that. But now,
and then correct in post.
Yeah, and then
because sometimes like 3200 isn't 3200 in your camera.
No, and I've pushed it up to like if it's going to be around 35 is usually where I sit it at. It's a little nicer. It's a full-on event in that they've got like a meet and greet to start with major sponsors. Then they'll do a red carpet. Then they'll do the ceremony. Then there's the awards on stage. And then there's the award winners post getting their portraits done. So there's all kinds of stuff, moving parts in that. Now, with the red carpet particularly, and also they want it all straight away. They want
so
photos.
By straight away, they mean tomorrow. 9 a.m. on their desk tomorrow, right?
No, they want it like now.
Literally
because
now.
Because now with social media and everying, they want to be posting stuff.
Yep. As it's happening, so it stays relevant, stays in people's minds.
And still I'm probably getting to the stage now where I could use somebody, an editor type person, to just sit on the computer and edit, and I can just throw them cards and they can just edit. But I've still been able to do it myself because, again, I've got the full schedule of the evening. I've got their brief and what they want to capture, and I've pre-visualized, how I'm going to make all that work. And you can't take photos of people when they're having dinner. So dinner,
it's not very flattering.
Entrees, dinner, desserts are good breaks for me to just run into edit. So, but what I've done now is I'm using the Godox 400 on the red carpet with just a pop-up softbox on it. I mean, a beauty dish, and I've just got that sitting over my head, doing all the red carpet stuff. So I can go from portrait to landscape, and there's no difference in the light, the direction of the light if the flash is on the camera. So it's consistent light throughout the whole red carpet event. So when they all go and sit down and they start their hors d'oeuvres, I've got my laptop in the back all ready to go. I just plug it in, load those red carpet shots, edit the first one, sync the rest in Lightroom, and it's done. And then I just have to pick the photos of the particular people that they want. I output it. I've already set up a folder in my Dropbox. I know there's different ways that the media can do it. They've got all their special programs and stuff, which their workflow can be a little bit quicker, but I've just kept it as simple as possible and as brain-free as simple as possible. edit them, drop them into the Dropbox. I've already got the Wi-Fi and all that set up, so it's all good to go. I've come early, tested it all out, made sure it's all working, and they've already got I've already sent them the link. The media people, I've already sent them the link to the Dropbox, and I've got their phone numbers. So as soon as I output, drop it into my Dropbox, it's already. I've only outputted enough resolution for their social media, so it's not huge files. So they're going to transfer really quickly. Then I just send them a text and I said I just did a drop, and then they can pick it up there and put it straight through to their laptop. And then they've just fixed it up a little bit, crop it a bit, and post it. So within, by the time I finish shooting the red carpet to when they're posting it onto socials is less than like 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. Same with at the end of the night when you've got the 3 award winners, and we quickly grab them and drag them before they get away anywhere. Back over to the red carpet, the media wall. I've already got it all set up. I quickly take a few photos, singles, triple, and then if there's any other VIPs that want to get photos done too, we do that real quickly. I race back, drop it in again. It's all so we've got the workflow going. So within 10 minutes of them coming out, they've already got the photos and they're posting them within a few minutes. So that
sounds
whole
very
workflow,
efficient.
yeah, it's been a process I've learned over the years. Adding a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Sometimes I've even got filters or presets that I've created in Lightroom that I can just drop over it really quickly because I know that's going to work in that scenario. Yeah, with that particular lighting, I've got it all set up. So yeah, the workflow can go quite nicely. And then I've got multiple cards, and having the CF Express card too just transfers so quickly. It's ridiculous how quickly. Oh yeah,
transferring.
That's all boom there, and then editing is just so quick. I've using Apple, so yeah, it's been a process, but it's I've got a few more ideas that I can make it a little bit nicer.
Yeah, share with me. Is there anything extra that you can add on top of this to make what would the changes be? Would it be to make it faster, to make your job easier, to make it better?
Everything seems to be going quite nicely as it is. I'm shooting some of these ones, particularly, and I'm always asking before I do the job, what are these photos going to be used for?
It's very important.
How do you want them, and what formats do you want them in? All that kind of fun stuff. But the end usage is the most important. And when they say that they will most likely only be used for social content, then I know I don't have to do full high res stuff. And I've seen how they've used a lot of the event photos that I've taken of like performers and things like that. They'll use them on the front of a menu, or they're all over their website and things like that. Not often do they. I've only had a few times where I've had a few photos I've done put onto billboards. So then, you're thinking that you want full resolution for that. But I'm only shooting on C-RAW now most of the time. I've really tried to test and see if I could pick up the difference. I've not picked up much of a difference between full RAW and C-RAW. So that's half the size right there. Obviously I can take a lot more, but I've got multiple cards. So yeah, it's just refining that process to really make it a lot faster. But for now it's on, I've got it to where it's quite smooth. I could probably use another person to just sit there so I can roam a little bit more. I don't have to be running backwards and forwards.
Yeah, and I think it would make it a little less stressful and clear up a little bit of mental bandwidth as well. I think that probably would be a good idea. Just every project's different. So the client might think that there's not enough budget or whatever for 2 people to do it or whatever. But in the end, if you can have dedicated people doing a dedicated task, I think it always ends up being a better result.
And I think you're right in that it would free up my mental space a bit more to just focus on what's going on, and not have to.
It'll make it more enjoyable, probably as well. One less thing to worry about.
People.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, you always find from the client or find out what the photos are being used for. And if someone says it's not just for, but if someone says it's for social media, would you crop the images to make it portrait, or would you do anything different in that regard?
I'm always thinking with that in mind. So I'm actually shooting a little bit wider than probably what I usually do.
Because you got 45 megapixels.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to, if somebody's speaking at a podium on stage, I'd usually nice to get nice tight photos, but I just broaden it out a bit. So it gives the people doing social media the opportunity to crop the way they want it to crop it.
And do you find that they do that, or do they just take the images as is and like, oh, this is what the photographer gave me? Or do you find that they crop it, they then add their own cool filter that looks…
Well, that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
I wish we could put little barriers on the images that they couldn't put filters on.
Yeah.
But like a couple, red carpet's always full length. So a couple standing at the red carpet, I can't just do that in portrait. I've got to do it more in landscape so that it could be a square. So that means I need more space on either side. So I tend to, even if it's full length, I tend to do it in landscape. So they've got the opportunities to crop it like that. And then newspapers have picked them up from their socials, and they've cropped them a little bit different, or they've had to crop them tighter because of, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely things that you got to be thinking about these days.
Yeah, I shoot photos with my Sony A7R5, and that's 61 megapixels, which is way too many megapixels that I need it for. But I do find myself shooting a bit wider, knowing that I can crop in post. But I was working with someone the other day. They said that they don't shoot for the crop. They try to get things as right as possible. And that's one way to do it, and that's nice. And if you can do it, that's always good. But I have found that if you do shoot just a little bit wider, you can always just zoom in just a little bit, because in post, you can't zoom out unless you're using AI and telling it to do that.
Yeah,
and they might not get it right as well.
Well, I do still work for the Shane Warne Legacy now it is. I'm official business partner with the Shane Warne Legacy. So I do a lot of their designs and posters and things like that. And even the other day, you've got that famous photo of Shane tipping his hat to the crowd from his last game. I needed it. It's just more of a square. So I needed it a little bit wider. And I just brought it in Photoshop, made the canvas to what size I wanted, and then just selected the two ends and then just said, generate. Man, it created the stands, the grass, the crowd, everything. And it was like, oh man, now I've got a nice wide photo that I can use for posters and different things in different scenarios. So yeah, that's another AI tool that just would take me 3 or 4 hours to edit something like that. And I did it in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I've been noticing online, I think more and more we've got to start, I think with Instagram, if you do use AI, you need to let them know.
Okay.
Or it might automatically know that you've used AI for something, and then it'll have a little disclaimer saying AI has been used on this image. So it's an interesting world that we're emerging into, and we'll see how AI goes. And Clinton, to finish today's episode, I'll put you on the spot. Have you got any hot takes in regards to photography that you hold dear to and other people may not necessarily agree with?
Oh, gosh. Actually, I started by just offering my services to some people just to get the experience. Now, I know people say, oh, you should never work for free, but I worked for the Shane Warne Foundation as a volunteer for 15 years. That gave me access to people, and I proved myself to be quite trustworthy. I never gave away any of his photos, and I kept them quite tight. So I end up being quite trustworthy within that little group, which made me get into the inner group of those people. And then the work that flowed out of that, and just being able to say the cloud of just being able to say you're Shane Warne's photographer and things like that. So yeah, I'm not afraid to do free stuff. I'm doing a free job on Saturday night just because I believe in this organization. They're doing a fundraiser, and I just offered my services to do a free thing because I know that benefit them. So I still do volunteer my services.
Even after all these years?
Even after all these years, yeah. Just because I like to give back. I like to teach as well. I teach photography. So yeah, don't be afraid to get out there and just offer your services, because there's all kinds of charities that are doing awards night or fundraisers or events. And they would love a photographer to come in and take photos so they could use to promote it next time or to say thank you to people and all that kind of stuff. And I don't do a half job. I really do as an important job as I can, a best job as I can. Coming from a design background, I know the importance of getting photos of like how the tables were set up, how the event, the whole place was set up, the little details of the flowers or the arrangements on the table. I'm getting those things in my briefs now, but before it was just like making sure I covered the whole event, got each business that was involved, and definitely getting good photos of all the people that sponsored the event so that they can give photos to the sponsors and keep them happy, all that kind of stuff.
Have you found that you've ever given your services for free, delivered above and beyond product, and then the images never see the light of day?
Oh yeah, that happens. Yeah, particularly when you think, oh, this is a great opportunity for them to like just flood their socials with all kinds of cool photos, and then nothing because they don't have the people power to do it. And then other times it's like, you get all kinds of doing collaborations on Instagram now. One of the skaters that I've been photographing a fair bit was in the Olympics just this week. And whenever I did photos of him, I would always set it up as a collaboration on Instagram because I know if he says yes to that collaboration, then I'm also going to get flooded as well because that's one of my sports that I love trying to photograph. And they've got big followings, those guys.
Yeah. So I guess, the nugget or the takeaway with your hot take is it is good to do work for free if it benefits you and hopefully the organization that you're doing the free work for. I think asking the question right up front, how are these images going to be used? Who's going to post them? Where can we expect to see them? Because sometimes clients might just think it's good to have, but then they move on to the next thing, they forget about it. And then you've given up your Saturday night or whatever thinking that this is going to do or be really beneficial for them. And then it's a bit disheartening not having it being used. And then the next time someone asks, you might be a little bit more resistant to do it.
Or you can push back at that probably and say like, okay, I'll do it, but make sure you do that, or can we help you do that, or something like that.
And then on the flip side, like they don't use them, and then on the flip side, they do use them, and then that can then lead to future work for yourself. It can lead to bigger and better things for the person or company that you took those photos for. So they are things that need to be considered, I think.
And sometimes you're just doing it for the love of the photography and just wanting to help out and do it. The buzzword these days is be authentic about it. That's how I got into doing the street art festival and things like that. I love the art. I love the street art and watching the creative process of those artists. So I love that. I love that whole scene. So just to be able to now photograph some of the best artists around the world is pretty full on.
Excellent. Well, Clinton, thank you for joining me on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Thank you for having me.